Have you ever sat alone with your thoughts, maybe in your favorite chair by the window, and asked yourself, why did they do that to me? It might have been a friend you trusted, a partner you loved, or even someone in your own family. You gave them your heart, your time, your loyalty, and in return, they gave you silence, lies, or worse, betrayal. As we get older, we tend to reflect more. Life slows down just enough for us to hear what we might have ignored before. And in those quiet moments, one truth becomes crystal clear. Not every hurt deserves forgiveness. That might sound harsh, especially if you've always tried to be the bigger person. Maybe you were taught to forgive no matter what, to turn the other cheek, to keep the peace even if it meant breaking your own heart. But let me tell you something that might set you free. Forgiveness is a choice, not a requirement. And there are some betrayals so deep, so damaging, that forgiving them doesn't heal you. It actually keeps you from healing. Now, this video isn't about bitterness. It's not about holding on to anger. It's about clarity. It's about knowing when someone has crossed a line so clearly that letting them back into your life would only open the door for more hurt. It's about dignity. Your dignity. Let's talk about the first kind of betrayal that should never be excused. And that's deliberate dishonesty. You know what I mean? Not a small mistake or a forgotten detail. No, I'm talking about the kind of lie that's crafted, rehearsed, and delivered straight to your face, all while they know the truth and choose to hide it. The kind that makes you feel like a fool later on, not because you were gullible, but because you were kind. Because you believed in someone who didn't deserve it. Lying is not just about hiding facts, it's about power. A person who lies to you has decided that their control, their comfort, their narrative matters more than your truth. And when they do it again and again, it's no longer a mistake. It's a message. I can do this to you, and you'll let me. That kind of message has no place in your life anymore. Maybe you've experienced it already. You confronted them, and they said they were sorry. They swore it wouldn't happen again. And for a while, you wanted to believe it. You held on, hoping their words would start to match their actions. But time proved something else. They were only sorry they got caught. Here's something worth remembering. A truly sorry person doesn't wait to be exposed. They come forward. They feel the weight of their own guilt, and they can't carry it. They confess because their conscience won't let them rest. But how often does that really happen? More often, what you'll find is someone apologizing only when their comfort is threatened, when your distance starts to scare them. That's not remorse. That's self-preservation. Now let's talk about something a little harder to see, but just as painful. Disrespect. It doesn't always come with yelling or name-calling. Sometimes, disrespect is quiet. It's subtle. It hides in the jokes they make at your expense, the way they roll their eyes when you're speaking from the heart, or the way they dismiss your feelings as too sensitive. You try to explain how something hurt you, and they laugh it off. You speak your truth, and they wave it away like it's nothing. And after a while, without even realizing it, you begin to shrink. You stop bringing things up. You stop expecting respect. You forget that you deserve more than being tolerated. That's how it happens. One little moment at a time, until you're standing in a relationship where your feelings are optional, where your voice is muted, where you no longer recognize the confident person you used to be. And here's the hardest part. When you love someone, you'll make excuses for them. You'll tell yourself they didn't mean it, or they're just going through a tough time, or maybe you're being too sensitive after all. But you know what? Respect is not optional. It's not something you earn. It's the foundation. Without it, everything else falls apart. You may be thinking right now, but what if they change? And that's fair. People can change. But they rarely do when you keep forgiving the same behavior. Because every time you excuse it, they learn that there are no consequences, that you'll always stay. So I want you to consider this, not with anger in your heart, but with love for yourself. How many times have you been hurt by someone who promised to never do it again? How many times have you put their comfort above your own peace? And what would it look like if just once you said, "No more"? That's not weakness. That's not cold-heartedness. That's wisdom. That's what happens when you've lived enough life to know what you'll no longer allow. There's something powerful about being over 60. You've seen things. You've lived through heartbreaks, lessons, sacrifices. And if you've made it this far, you've earned the right to protect your peace at all costs. There's nothing selfish about walking away from someone who makes you feel small. There's nothing wrong with deciding that your well-being matters more than keeping the peace for someone who's shattered yours again and again. Because at the end of the day, betrayal doesn't define your worth, it reveals theirs. And the sooner you stop trying to fix what you didn't break, the freer you become. Let's keep going. Because there's more to uncover. More truths to help you stand a little taller. And it starts with understanding the next kind of betrayal, one that too many of us overlook. We often imagine betrayal as something loud and unmistakable, a sudden act that leaves you breathless. But the truth is, some of the most damaging betrayals don't scream. They whisper. They build slowly, almost quietly, until one day you realize you've been standing in a relationship that feels nothing like safety. This next kind of betrayal may look harmless from the outside, but it's one that can wound you deeply. Emotional manipulation. It starts with small things. Someone you care about does something hurtful. You bring it up, not to argue, but to understand, to find common ground. Instead of hearing you, they turn it around. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're too demanding, too dramatic, too emotional. You begin to question your own memory of events, even your own instincts. That's not miscommunication. That's gaslighting, a form of manipulation designed to make you doubt your reality so they can control the story. Maybe you've been there. You tried to stand up for yourself, only to be met with guilt trips or silence. You were made to feel like your pain was a burden. They twist the narrative until you're the one apologizing for being hurt. And it works, doesn't it? You begin to shrink. You second-guess yourself. You lose your footing. But let me say this as clearly as I can. Anyone who makes you feel guilty for having boundaries does not deserve a place in your life. The people who love you won't weaponize your kindness. They won't use your compassion as a tool to avoid accountability. Real love doesn't play games with your head. It sits with your discomfort. It says, "I hear you. Let's work through this." Manipulation, on the other hand, says, "You're wrong for feeling that way," and then expects you to fix what they broke. And what about those who only show up when it benefits them? The friend who disappears during your hardest moments but always returns when they need something. The family member who doesn't ask how you are, but has no problem asking for favors. Or the partner who vanishes at the first sign of your sadness, only to resurface with sweet words when the storm has passed. That, my friend, is conditional love. And conditional love is not love at all. See, love doesn't only show up when it's easy. Love isn't about convenience. It's about consistency. It's about holding space for each other, especially when things get messy. If someone walks away when you're at your lowest, they're not just absent. They're showing you their true character. You deserve more than fair-weather loyalty. I want to pause here for a moment and ask you something. Have you ever had to fight through pain alone, only to see that someone you counted on chose silence instead of support? It hurts, doesn't it? Because more than the absence, it's the message behind it. It tells you, you don't matter enough for me to be uncomfortable. And that right there is betrayal in its quietest form. Now you may be thinking, but I've known this person for years. We have history. And that's understandable. Time has a way of softening our resolve. But history is not a reason to stay where you are not respected. Shared memories don't erase present-day pain. Just because someone's been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they've earned the right to stay. It's not easy, I know. Especially when you're someone who believes in forgiveness, in second chances, in giving people room to grow. That speaks volumes about your heart. But here's the truth you must never forget. You are not responsible for someone else's growth. You can't carry both your pain and their potential. And maybe you've already tried. Maybe you've explained and explained again. Maybe you've waited, given them the benefit of the doubt, hoped for the day they'd see you, really see you, for who you are and treat you with the care you deserve. But some people don't change, not because they can't, but because they don't want to. Because they're comfortable just as things are, comfortable with you giving more and accepting less. And you've been uncomfortable for too long. Let me be the one to remind you today that there is no shame in walking away. There is no weakness in saying, enough. You are not cruel for choosing peace. You are not heartless for setting boundaries. And you are not obligated to keep people in your life just because you love them. Love must go both ways. Otherwise, it becomes an obligation, a duty, a weight you carry alone. Maybe no one's told you this in a while, but you have every right to protect your heart, especially now. At this stage in life, your peace is not a luxury, it's a necessity. You've walked through too many storms to keep inviting thunder back into your home. So when someone lies to you, manipulates your kindness, or only shows up when they need something, remember this: you are not here to fix them. You are here to honor yourself. You've earned the right to say no without guilt, to close the door without explanation, to choose your well-being over their apologies. And yes, it can feel lonely at first. Setting boundaries often does. But the right people, the ones who truly see you, hear you, value you, they will stay. And the wrong ones? Let them go. Let them walk out with their excuses and empty promises. You don't need their permission to reclaim your peace. You only need one thing: the belief that you are worth more than what they've offered you. And you are. Let's keep going. You see, by the time we reach this chapter of life, we've come to understand something that youth often rushes past. Not every relationship is meant to last, and not every person who says they care actually does. That truth can sting at first, but over time, it becomes liberating. Because it means you no longer have to hold on out of guilt or fear or habit. You can let go. And when you do, something beautiful happens. You begin to return to yourself. Let's talk for a moment about one of the most overlooked betrayals: abandonment in your time of need. This betrayal doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it's just silence, distance, a missing presence when life gets hard, the friend who stops calling when you're grieving, the child who disappears when your health declines, the partner who becomes emotionally unavailable when you need support the most. They were there when things were light, when life was easy. But the moment your world got heavy, they backed away. They didn't have the strength or the will to stay by your side. And that, right there, is a wound that cuts deeper than most. Because when you're older, your needs aren't always loud. Sometimes you just want someone to sit with you, to listen without fixing, to hold space without judgment. When the people closest to you vanish at those times, it leaves a loneliness that's hard to explain. It's not just that they left, it's that they chose to. And in doing so, they told you without words that your pain was too inconvenient for their comfort. That kind of abandonment can break something inside you if you let it. But you don't have to let it. You can name it for what it is. You can say to yourself, I was there for them when they needed me. They weren't there when I needed them. That tells me everything I need to know. And then you can choose differently. You can choose not to let that person back into your life with the same access they once had. That's not revenge. That's wisdom. That's self-respect. People will tell you to always forgive, to always move on, to always be the bigger person. And yes, forgiveness can be healing, but only when it's earned. Only when it doesn't come at the cost of your peace. Because here's the danger: when you continue to forgive someone who keeps hurting you, you're no longer being kind. You're being used. You're teaching them that they can break your trust and still keep your loyalty. That they can disappear when you need them and still expect to be welcomed back. That's not love. That's entitlement. The people who truly love you will never put you in that position. They will never expect you to sacrifice your peace so they can sleep easier. They won't make you feel guilty for protecting your heart. They will understand, even if it hurts them, because they respect you enough to accept your boundaries. And that's the difference between someone who values you and someone who uses you. You've lived too much life to be anyone's safety net while they continue to walk on the edge. You've given enough chances. You've explained yourself enough times. If they didn't hear you the first time, or the 10th, then they weren't really listening. They were waiting. Waiting for you to go back to silence, to giving in, to staying. But not anymore. This is your time now. Not to prove anything. Not to fight for people who won't fight for you. But to protect the joy, the peace, the dignity you've earned over a lifetime of showing up for others. So when someone shows you that they're not willing to change, believe them. When someone keeps crossing your boundaries, even after you've made them clear, believe them. When someone can lie, disrespect, manipulate, or abandon you without remorse, believe them. And once you believe them, let go. Not with bitterness, not with rage, but with the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth. Who no longer begs for basic respect, who no longer confuses history with loyalty, who no longer thinks love must hurt to be real. You deserve better. Not someday, not in the next life, now. And maybe you're wondering, if I let all these people go, who's left? The answer is simple. You are. And that's enough. Because when you clear out the space where pain used to live, you make room for the people who truly see you. People who don't need to be taught how to treat you because they already do. People who show up. People who stay. They're out there. But they can only find you when you stop dimming your light to keep the wrong ones close. So let this be your turning point. Not just a moment of reflection, but a quiet revolution inside your heart. The day you said, "No more. I choose peace. I choose respect. I choose me." And when you do, the world around you begins to shift. You stop attracting pain disguised as love. You stop welcoming chaos dressed as care. And for the first time in a long time, you breathe. You rest. You reclaim your life. Because here's what they don't tell you enough. It's never too late to start again. Not with anger, with clarity, with courage, with love for yourself. So if someone has shown you who they truly are, if they've hurt you and asked for forgiveness not with change but with excuses, if they've left you alone in your darkness and expected to be welcomed back into your light, then don't be afraid to close the door. Not because you don't love them, but because you finally love yourself enough to walk away. And that is the kind of strength that sets you free.